When creating consumer products, oftentimes they are created using some of the more advanced sketching tools found inside Solidworks. This board design has several areas where it could use some improvements using several new enhancements found in SolidWorks 2014. Let's start by changing the path of the sweep used for the strengthening rib found on the bottom side. This sketch currently uses simple fillets and might benefit from some conic fillets instead. Now, when you add a conic to a sketch, there's an option to automatically add tangency relationships to adjacent sketch geometry. This removes several steps where previously you would have had to select the conic and the adjacent entity and manually apply the tangency. This will save lots of time if you are adding conics, especially in multiple places. Now, all that's required is to add the appropriate dimensions to the sketch. This includes the row values for the conics themselves, as well as the length of the adjacent lines. And as you can see, the sketch is now fully defined without the need to manually add any sketch relationships to the conics. We'll do that to the sketch profile used in the same feature. Like before, we'll remove the existing entity, and again, adding the conic is easy, as the sketch relationships are added automatically. And again, all that's needed is to add the row value, and in this case, we'll move the sketch geometry by simply snapping it into place. Now, when we close this sketch, we can see that all of the geometry in this part has updated with the new, more desirable conics in place of the previous simple geometry. This is just another example of the power of parametric modeling, of which you'll definitely see some more. Another entity used a lot in consumer products is the powerful spline tool. When we take a look at this sketch, which defines the overall length and shape of the board, we can see that it's well defined already, with the exception of the overall length. In some scenarios, such as wanting to define the amount of material used, such as how much carbon fiber is needed and the overall length of this design, specifying the length of the spline would be desirable. And that's exactly what SolidWorks 2014 allows you to do now. This provides more control over splines and is useful in other areas as well, such as cable and tube lengths. Finally, while we're talking about splines, sometimes, especially for new users, they can be intimidating trying to get all the geometry just right. Controlling the inflection and maintaining a smooth profile require proper definition of spline points, such as this spline here. SolidWorks 2014 introduces a completely new spline tool that removes all of these concerns, called the Style Spline. Instead of individual spline points, which need to have the curvature and magnitude controlled, they are simply placed with construction lines. These lines can then be further defined using simple and familiar sketch relationships and dimensions all users are familiar with. As all the required relationships and dimensions are added, it becomes fully defined quite easily also, letting us know it will be fully controlled by any upstream design changes. If we take a look at the curvature of this style spline, we can see without any extra effort, every bend is smooth with minimal inflection. Finally, we would like to update this feature and all downstream features to utilize this new style spline as opposed to the previous spline. Replace Sketch Entity now makes this possible. All that's needed is to select the entity which you would like to replace and then the entity to replace it with. There's even the choice to keep the previous geometry as a construction entity or delete it completely. Now, when the sketch is closed, not only does this feature update, all downstream dependent features also now reference this new spline and update with zero effort.